Today is the 5th of February, and you should know that on this day, Gaius Julius Caesar Octavius, also added the Octavius to distinguish him from his own adoptive father, the Julius Caesar, is given the title at the tender age of 61 of Pater Patriae, also known as Father of the Fatherland of the Roman Republic at the time. The 5th, or 4th, if you consider Romulus a mythological figure, to be given this title in the Roman Republic or Roman Empire, and only one of the two father-son combos to be given this title back to back. Now, talking about something completely different, today we have more balanced tuning coming the way of 11.1. It's very fitting that we have the video today right after we have had our couple of videos about the state and the situation of the specs in Mythic Plus and in the raid, because this way you can better understand some of these changes, because we have mentioned some of the either problems of certain specs being too weak or having some problems in their talents, or specs being too powerful right now in the videos we made a few days ago, and now we have the tuning that will somewhat, explain why some of these things are being changed, and it will be more understandable. For example, the first of the changes will be very understandable because it's the nerfs to the death coil damage of Unholy Death Knight. We pointed out a few days ago how most of the Unholy results in the PTR were switching away from Rider. They were playing Sun Lane, they were ditching a whole bunch of pets and pets damage because Death Coil was doing just that much damage, and it became that much more powerful. So what's happening now is Death Coil damage is reduced by 13%, Magus of the Dead, so pet minion damage talent, is being buffed by 35%, Commander of the Dead damage of your minions is increased by 10%, Gargoyle damage is also increased by 15%. This results in Rider and traditional pet build now being practically at the same damage as your Sun Lane, compared to what it was prior to this change, where Sun Lane was 5+% ahead than the Rider build and the just more minion focused build. Now, moving over to the next one being changed, Demon Hunter, we have two very similar changes, both for Havoc and for Vengeance, which is skimming the costs of your talents. When it comes to Havoc Demon Hunter, you have Cycle of Hatred now being turned into a 1 talent point. Now, this one was being taken universally, whether or not you were playing with Felskard or with Aldrachi Reaver. At the moment, in the PTR at least, Aldrachi Reaver, no, we're not stopping with the dog in the background. We are considering this a background OST for this video. Even though Aldrachi Reaver is doing slightly more damage than Felskard right now in the PTR, it is still, of course, Felskard doing better in AoE, in Mythic Plus. It's a very good change because in both of the talent specs, Cycle of Hatred was an always taken talent, pretty much. So now you have the talents costing 1 point instead of 2. So this means that now you can take a Fire Inside for free, that you can take a Screaming Brutality for free, you can go back to taking your 2 out of 2 of Blind Fury, and just damage increase due to, very simply, having one more talent point available when it comes to Havoc. Same treatment is being given to Vengeance. Now, Vengeance also gets something else, because what happened prior to this, a few days ago, in another round of tuning, was that Demon Surge was being buffed by 40%, and then Burning Blaze were being buffed by 50% extra damage instead of 35% extra damage. These are being reverted, so technically it's a nerf, but the result is that it is still a larger number, more damage than what you had in live. So even with Demon Surge damage being nerfed and Burning Blaze now dealing 40% of the damage of listed abilities instead of 50, these numbers are still higher than what you would have in live. They're just less high than the older PTR build. The other change is the skimming again of the talent points, this time for Feed the Demon, now being 1 point instead of 2. The difference here is that this is also getting nerfed in the Valley, because when it came to Havoc, the entire talent was also changed, because Cycle of Hatred right now in live gets you CDR to your I-Beam when you cast Blade Dance and Chaos Strike and Glaive Tempest, whereas now in 11.1 it's a 5-second cooldown reduction when you cast I-Beam. to your I-beam. So the extra free cast of I-beam will give you CDR to your own I-beam. And this is now cut to being a 1 talent point instead of 2, but the duration, the 5-second cooldown, remains the same. For Vengeance, there is the 70-ish% nerf, because previously this was 0.25 second of cooldown reduction at 2 points, so 2 out of 2 would have been a 0.5 second cooldown reduction, but now is instead a 0.35 second with the talent only being 1 point. So you do get 1 more point in your talents to spend elsewhere, but of course now you're also losing slightly your CDR of your demon spikes. The build is still the better performing one, the one that goes to the sides of Soul Crush and Illuminated Sigils. You still have the option to go either Feed the Demon or Cycle of Binding if you want to have it a little bit more complicated, but overall these changes for Vengeance are also positive as well. Freeing yourself up of a talent point is always very valuable, especially of course if the talent point you're getting for free is in the last bracket of talents, which are usually the more powerful ones, the ones that can give you way more impact in your build. What is not giving a lot of impact are the changes to Flame Shaper for Evoker, giving you slightly more damage to your Consume Flame for the ticks of Fire Breath. It's still a very weak damaging ability, especially for Preservation, but this also has to be used by Devastation, and it still isn't, because it is still very weak even after this change. The main major change for Evoker actually isn't even the buffs to Devastation. Devastation still lives in the sadness of being overshadowed by Augmentation, although they might be overshadowed by slightly less, because now upheavals from Liberation of Undermine 2 set bonus no longer increase the duration of Ebonmite. Now very simply, Augmentation had your Jackpot proc, which gave you a free upheaval cast at 100% effectiveness. That does not knock enemies up. However, it's still counted as a full cast upheaval, giving you the extension to the duration of your Ebonmite. This was giving you a very high uptime of Ebonmite, 83% uptime in Mythic class, even upwards of 86% uptime in the raid. Now this is being lowered down. That's literally what it is with this change to Augmentation. So I'm afraid now you will have to go back actually pressing this button a little bit more often than you were doing in the PTR. Not anything really too drastic when it comes to Hunters, just a 10% damage increase to Black Arrow, Pack Leader Bear, damage reduced by 20%, and True Shot now giving you 20% more crit damage instead of 10 when it comes to the two ranged Hunters, as well as flat out damage increase across the board for Survival. These are just, very minor 1 to 2% damage increase changes up and down. In no way are they changing your build or the value, for example, of some of the talents, like we have just seen, for example, for Unholy or for Vengeance or for Havoc Demon Hunter. What changes a little bit more are the changes to Arcane Barrage damage increased by 20%. We had thoughts of this on the state of Arcane in 11.1, the previous changes to Arcane, again removing the planned removal, compared to if you go back to live, the removal of Ether Vision. Now this is an attempt to making Arcane Barrage more easy to use, because at the moment Arcane Mages have this problem where Arcane Barrage is interacted with 2, 3, 4, 5 different buffs, different situations or yes/no scenarios on whether or not it is worth while to cast Arcane Barrage, and they are not often lining themselves up together in a very easy way to understand compared, for example, to other specs. Like, for example, hey, my Holy Power is full, I guess I can use a spender. Hey, my Maelstrom is about to be capped, I guess I get to use one of my spenders, or my Maelstrom stacks are up to 10, it's time to spend them. For Arcane, an Arcane Barrage was much more tricky to keep track of. You had to start developing entire weak auras to pretty much tell you when it was time to click Arcane Barrage based on all of the different conditionals of Arcane Barrage. So the idea, of course, of buffing Arcane Barrage by 20% is let's up the threshold of damage done by Arcane Barrage so it's easier to know when it's worth casting, because now it just does more damage. Now this ups also if you keep all of these conditional buffs still active while still buffing the damage of this Arcane Barrage. You to increase the chance, the danger of Arcane turning into a 4 Arcane Blast into Arcane Barrage, rinse and repeat kind of build. There is that risk, but at the moment, to make it easier to know when to cast Arcane Barrage, looks like a decent band-aid. Let's just put it that way. Fire doesn't get a band-aid, it gets an attempt at moving away from Sunken Blessing by nerfing the damage bonus of Sunken Blessing, which is very minor. That's not what matters. What matters is Unleashed Inferno damage bonus increased to 70% instead of 60%, and now Hyperthermia chance to trigger has been increased down to 1.5 procs per minute, which is over, I think, 30% compared to before. It was like 1.9, now it's down to 1.5, so you get to proc Hyperthermia even more. Now, Unleashed Inferno is, technically speaking, the flavor of the season for Fire, because the tier set itself of Fire Mage is very centered around your combustion, of course. You could, in fact, dare I say, mention that this might be the combustiest tier for Fire we have seen in a long time, because you have the 2-piece which reduces the CDR of your combustion, and entering combustion also guarantees you trigger jackpot, and more importantly, when you hit a jackpot, your damage is increased by 15% for 7 seconds. If you would gain jackpot from combustion, then the duration is increased by 200%, meaning 14 seconds, which is just about the duration of your talented and improved combustion, especially as Sun Fury. So the idea is to significantly buff the damage of your power level inside of combustion, and the strongest talent to improve the damage inside of combustion that you have as Fire is, of course, Unleashed Inferno, and now it's being buffed even more. So now you have basically 70% more damage of your abilities inside of combustion, even more CDR of combustion inside of combustion from those abilities. With some Fury, with playing some Fury, you have things like Savor the Moment to extend the duration of combustion itself. So it should be the flavor option for the season based on how your tier set work, way more so than playing still with Sunken's Blessing. Even more so that right now the CDR of your combustion might be dragged so low if you're playing Unleashed Inferno, plus the extension of the duration, plus you still have the CDR now buffed to 2 seconds of your Fire Blast when playing some Fury, which was not nerfed, unlike the Frostfire talent tree, which was nerfed in the CDR of your Phoenix Flames, that you might even move away from improved combustion to play with spontaneous combustion to get your charges back, because your combustion will go down to having like a 30-second cooldown, and you won't even have the time to get all of your charges back. Either way, it's a good change in an attempt to make Unleashed Inferno more viable in this combustion-focused season for Fire Mage. Next of the valuable changes is for enhancement, and when I say valuable, I mean nerfs. So the tier set is being nerfed because Crash Lightning was getting out of control. So each stack of Electrostatic Wager will now increase the damage of Crash Lightning by 18% instead of 24%. So this one is the changed tier set after the original has been cut away. That was the CDR, the Mega CDR down to your Doom Winds. Instead now it was changed to stack up the damage. When you get your winning streak proc of the tier set, you get 4 seconds of Doom Winds, and then every time your Doom Winds deals damage, your next Crush Lightning deals 18% more damage now after the nerf, up to 90%. And this effect can be stored up to 10 different stacks. It was going, reasonably out of control, to the point that every time you would proc this Crash Lightning or use it on pretty much on cooldown, you were doing upwards of 1+ million per hit, and that was just the initial hit, because after that then you have the 12 or something second long buff where every time you use, for example, Storm Strike or Lava Lash, you continue to spread this AoE damage of Crash Lightning, and if in between you are proccing Doom Winds, then the damage of your next Crush Lightning is even higher, because you keep stacking up this damage increase of your tier set. So Blizzard was like, okay, it's fine, but perhaps not that powerful, so they are nerfing this to stack up less often or less quickly than before. The cap is still the same, the cap is still 90% and can go upwards of 10 times the stacking, but now it stacks up more slowly than before. On top of that, you have also nerfs to Stormbringer. You have Stormbringer Awakening Storms now grant you Tempest every 4 times instead of every 3, mostly because perhaps now you have less of an incentive of waiting 10 stacks of Maelstrom. You can dump your Maelstrom stacks down to 5, which means you get to proc Tempest more often, which means you get to do way more damage with Tempest. Now it will take you, well, technically at the very least 5 more Maelstrom weapon stacks to get to proc Awakening Storms and get you to get a free Tempest, as well as Voltaic Surge nerfing the damage, particularly of Crush Lightning, as well as Chain Lightning for Enhancement Shaman in the Stormbringer build. This is one of the things we mentioned when we talked about Enhancement Shaman a few days ago, in not just in Mythic Plus but in the raid as well. They had 2 specs, 2 versions of enhancement doing top damage at the same time, the totemic version as well as this version of Stormbringer. This one is way more powerful in Mythic Plus, it's way more powerful in AoE than the totemic version, which is still strong in AoE, but in particular it has a lot of its power in single target, you know, in the raid, etc, etc. That was the special part of enhancement, and now you get the Stormbringer version nerfed for this build of the PTR. Nothing really that valuable for Warlock or even for Elemental or for Restoration Shaman. The last part of the changes is for Warrior. Arms and Fury were buffed by quite a bit in damage last PTR build. They're not getting anything again. However, Protection gets another wall of text of Blizzard, still in their attempts at changing the way Protection Warrior plays, in particular around generating and then spending your rage. Blizzard has pointed out multiple times that they don't enjoy this current, I guess, live version of Protection Warrior and the amount of rage, the amount of extra overflowing rage they get to dump into Ignore Pain. They have been trying to heavily reduce the rage generation of Protection Warrior while increasing the base, like, default strength of the spec defensively, as well as the power of Ignore Pain. So again, it's another wall of text repeating the same thing. Protection Warrior getting frequent Shield Slam cooldown resets as they occupy a large amount of your rotation and generate a large amount of rage, and then you couple this with the varying amount of defensive cooldowns Protection Warriors have to also increase your rage generation. It leaves you with little room to press anything else, so they are trying to lower this, and what they're doing this is lowering the reset cooldown chance of your Shield Slam from Devastator and Strategist. It's another attempt at this new version of Protection Warrior being changed in the PTR. For today though, these were all of the planned changes going live. These were all, of course, hot fixes. They are already live. If you're watching this video on the PTR, you can log in and already test all of these changes. Most of these were positive, of course. Every time there is this level of changes on the PTR, players will come in and start questioning, okay, where was my spec? You know, where is Shadow Priest? Where is Resto Shaman? Elemental Shaman? You know, what about Ret Paladin? Or what about my tank Guardian Druid? You know, as it often happens. But for today though, that's all we have in terms of balance tuning on the PTR of 11.1. So, with this out of the way on Wednesday, on EU's reset day for this 11.0.7 patch, we can now leave each other. We're starting as usual the goodbyes by thanking everyone for having watched the video, together with, of course, everyone who has been supporting Competi for free by liking and commenting down below, as well as subscribing to the channel itself. Now, with these things out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys tomorrow, and in the meantime, I didn't notice the OST concert of the Barking Dogs has been over for quite a while now. We have ambulances now though.